Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. Again, this is Lewis Cipher, and this is Devil's Advocate Debate Club Aftermath. In my Aftermath videos, I'll just be doing a less formal discussion of whatever topics I've covered in most recent videos, as well as any inane ramblings I think might be worth sharing with subscribers. My Patreon video cut me off. I'm not quite sure why. I'm still playing with my filming technology and don't really have an editing tool, so luckily it cut me off at a position that sounded intentional right after I'd asked a question. Really well timed. But I hadn't quite gotten through all of my points. So, if you'll bear with me for just a second, we'll see if I can't read my notes by firelight. If not, I've got a fair memory of what I was at least going for. Since I didn't have time when I normally film videos, though, I will have to do this while I tend to the fires. Alright. Firelight's not what it used to be for reading. I really should have just turned on my flash. But you live and you learn. Oh, and I'm old school. I still take my notes on paper, so no light-up screen to help me read them. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about while I get my notes in order is whether or not you should join or stay on Patreon if you're considering an account. Right, one of the things I was wondering was whether or not the Patreon issue is the one that has finally kind of brought the intellectual dark web, as it's been called, into a single solid mass. You know, there was something that was going to galvanize those separate but, well, kind of similar individuals that have been labeled the intellectual dark web, and I really think that banning them all from a platform where they make a living might be the thing that actually brings them together. Patreon might end up being kind of the unintentional martyr of the intellectual dark web, or I guess Sargon more would be the martyr. Maybe even Subscribestar. And then I have to wonder if one of the big issues that Patreon faces is the fact that they're in Silicon Valley and that we're seeing, just for better or for worse, more and more of a disconnect between what people in Silicon Valley think and what the people who use their services think. It's hard to say that either side is completely right or wrong on the subject, but it's definitely happening. And something I was wondering, thinking about the Patreon issue, is would it be a good idea for Silicon Valley to form its own kind of sub-community away from the rest of the world, maybe even with their own intranet, almost North Korea style, but, you know, obviously less awful, and just see what they would do if, you know, separated from everyone else and given their own space. I'm really curious to see what would happen. I know it never will, but I'm really, really curious. Now, one thing that we have to be careful about with the Patreon ban or any other service is, I don't know how many of you watch Black Mirror, but there was a episode called Nosedive. And in the episode Nosedive, The main character is trying to get into a better housing complex, but can't afford it because her social media score is too low. See, housing's cheaper depending on your score with what seems to be a national social media system, but this isn't actually, to my recollection, specified at any point in the episode. So, you can actually be denied housing, or worse, denied entry to your job, to your very place of work, simply because, well, you don't score high enough on social media. Imagine living in a world where if a hate mob from any side struck you, it could affect your life in very real, tangible, immediate ways, rather than the kind of correlative side effects that we see now. And I have to wonder if the bans we're seeing from Patreon, especially if they come from PayPal or from MasterCard, even worse, if these aren't the beginning of that style of system. I mean, one of the things parodied in the Black Mirror episode was the concept that you could lose your income over your social media score being too low. But it seems like that might be what we're seeing happen to some of these creators. There's too many people who associate them with too many negative things, whether or not they've said or done anything. And, well, once you're too associated, you're too guilty to be worth associating with. It's not necessarily that you're guilty of anything yourself, just that association with you is dangerous due to the community's views of you. Just something I was thinking about. The other thing with Patreon is I've seen it compared to being very Orwellian. Maybe it is. But in Orwell, it was the government taking over everything. So it had me wondering if maybe the only thing Orwell was wrong about in his nightmarish 1984, which was partially stolen from another author, but that's a whole other thing. Maybe if one of Orwell's points, or all of them, were true, except for the fact that it's corporations forming the surveillance state, as it were, rather than the government. Like, corporations might soon have more control over things like the financial industry than the government, which, well, if you control the money, you control the power, in a sense. It would be interesting to see if we start seeing signs of 1984 from the corporate sector instead of the governmental one. Oh, looks like I might have a guest on my channel. You want to say hi? No. Okay. They never do. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to go over in this clip, I'll just take a minute, is the name I've been using, Cipher. People have questioned... Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm just having dinner delivered. People have questioned whether or not I should come up with something more original. Cipher, for those of you who don't know, is a character from a movie Angel Heart. Cipher, Lucifer. Spoiler alert, he turns out to be the devil. And while I admit I knew about and liked the movie and character going in, that's not why I chose this name for my character on my channel. And Cipher is a character. You don't need to know my real name. The reason I chose Cipher is when I was going through the internet trying to come up with a good nickname for myself, I came across the Urban Dictionary post for that name, which states that Cipher is now a phrase meaning that the devil is always closer than you expect, or that the devil is currently closer than you expect. And I think one of the devils, so to speak, that the world is facing right now is, sorry, I was tending the fires, is this refusal to connect with the other side, whatever the other side may be. This split that we've seen among the identities that I think should end. And the thing is the closer you identify with any particular group, the more you're part of the problem if you're not careful. And groups are a good thing. That's society. That's how we keep moving forward. So, there were topics I never thought I would see debated growing up, which are matters of interest in the public eye now. If you're not ready for the other side's debate, if you're not ready for your opponent's positions, because you've never stopped to consider them before, because you've never stopped to put yourself in their shoes, then you're never going to really understand them. Not enough to change their opinion, or even to see if it's valid. That is the devil that's closer than we think. That's why I decided to take the name Louis Cipher. But my phone memory is running out. I'll have to upload a couple of videos and delete them. If you want to see videos longer than 40 minutes, I don't know, find a way to support the channel. Like and subscribe for now. I might get a Patreon or a subscribe star up at some point. And I'll do one more video on Patreon since I didn't get into why you should consider joining them or staying with them if you're currently a member. But that's okay. This is Louis Cipher with the Devil's Advocate Debate Club, signing out.